I love you guys. Dance off, bro. I have the high ground.
Expecto Patronum!
39 days, 20 people, 1 survivor.
Tribe of Nerds.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds. Excited to start our Survivor Vanquish Vanguards coverage, and we have to start episode 1, our preseason podcast with Kristin and Shane, our hosts of Survivor Vanquish. So welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds, Kristin and Shane.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to get a new season started and discuss it here.
Most definitely. Yeah. You know who was going to talk first? I was like, love you.
You're good. So how we're going to go about this is we'll just go through the cast by season. And just a disclaimer, like, we might not go into full detail about everybody, but we'll try to give you enough so that you know who these people are and you can get excited. And then we'll ask Kristin and Shane about their thought process on how they cast all-star seasons. And then we'll close it out. So to get us started, so I guess we got to start from season 1. So that would be Scott, correct?
Yep.
Scott. So Scott, I mean, he's coming into this as a very interesting player because in season 1, we were just getting going. Of course, there were so many like learning curves and things like that. But that season specifically was org people versus brand new people to the org world. Hindsight 2020, the whole season, that was a horrible theme to start with because these poor new people didn't stand a chance. But Scott was one of those people that he finally realized that like these org people are not even giving these new people a chance. We want these new people to actually get into org world. And so with that, he was like, let's make a move. And so he started to go over to the new people. He got a couple of his org people to come over with him. Ends up that other org people had an extra vote. They end up tying that vote. And because of a misunderstanding, thinking that the extra vote would not carry over, that unfortunately was an unsuccessful game-changing move. But it was a game-changing move for him to actually, like, we're done with the narrative over here.
Mm-hmm.
From what I know of Scott, like that's definitely on brand with him. Like he's someone that is always open to making moves. Like he's not going to be like your stereotypical chaotic player, but many people will characterize his gameplay as chaotic in the sense that he's not just going to go with the status quo. He's always going to think about how to change it up.
Yeah. No, it's cool when like people are always coming into this open. I feel like there's a couple of people on this cast that we'll get to that are like they go into these games open and like willing to completely change things up. And so I like that there's a lot of those people on this cast. So, and then season 2, and I guess we can talk about her now. And she played in season 8, Jen, of course. And I know Jen, she also played in my Heroes versus Villains mini. And she's been around a lot of orgs, of course. But what are your thoughts on Jen and, why she is on this cast?
Yeah, she's definitely a very interesting player. And she's had like a unique storyline, like this being her 3rd season, where her first time she was like early merge and jury, and definitely on the more chaotic side of things, and just got taken out early. Like she had a super idol, I believe, always putting herself in positions to have power, and she really proved herself as an all-star, I believe, in the Second Chance season where she's our fallen angel last jury member, and definitely had a strong chance to win if she wasn't taken out right at the end.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Jen is just one of those players that I think when, seeing her come from her first season, she learned a lot and came into Second Chances, and she really not only just learned a lot, but she used what she learned to really kind of make, like Shane was saying, that all-star, like really, like, which was crazy because that 4 was so, like, you thought those 4 were done for, and it was just amazing to see how well some connections from other games or people that they know from Vanquish or things like that were able to kind of be like, all right, let's have another chance at this and let's try and make a move here, which ended up being successful, and that's why she became an all-star.
Yeah, and I know even from watching Jen in her short time in Heroes versus Villains, she also brought a lot of fight. If she knows she's on the bottom, she is going to go down swinging. So that's the fun part about Jen. That we'll see if she ends up in a spot where she needs to fight. So
Most definitely.
and then season 3, it's first up we have Crystal from season 3.
Yes, so Crystal was an interesting player. I think this was her first Survivor org, I remember her saying. And so she came in, and Crystal is very much loyal. She speaks loyalty, she lives loyalty,
Mhm.
and she was very successful in building this you know, on the tranquility side, because it was chaos versus tranquility, to be like, guys, we're gonna talk about the challenge, we're gonna practice this challenge together, we're gonna do this. And she really kind of formed that unit where chaos was being chaos and just constantly going back to trouble because they couldn't get any of their crap together. And so they came in very much fully intact, and she was able to like carry that in very far into the merge, which then we'll get to where the other person of season 3. But like sticking with Crystal, Shane, you know, with her being able to bring a big group, that's obviously a target. Shane, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think definitely that qualifies her as a game changer in the sense of like the level of cohesiveness she brought to this group to create the sense of loyalty that ultimately was successful and caused them to win so many times and be the strong group where the other side was kind of getting torn apart. And it's a perfect lead in to, as you were mentioning, the other players who got all-star status.
AJ.
Yeah, so why we can
Yeah, we can merge them together because they're kind of, yeah.
So with that group, I think Crystal, like we call her a game changer for coming up with this like innovative way to play the game in that early season.
Mhm.
AJ, I think, would be an all-star more for like the level of agency he took to take Crystal with him and say, now you brought this group together, let's break this group up because the whole group can't win. Like we need to distinguish ourselves and really find out who's going to win the game.
Yeah, he had made that very genuine connection that even still to this day with Lindsay, who won that season. You know, to find that tranquil person to his chaos, and then to be like, let's make this move to break this group up because, like Shane said, y'all can't win the game. And so he was able to worm his way in there, break that group apart, and then, you know what I mean, like to really, they kind of started to decimate themselves at that point. So, and which led to, you know, Lindsay getting in there and winning the game by making those moves too. So I think AJ played a huge part, which made him an all-star.
Yeah, that makes sense. He's definitely here to try to snatch some wigs, so as he says.
Quote
So...
AJ. Quote unquote.
All right, and then season 4 we have Garrett and Nate. So we could touch on Garrett first. So what about Garrett made him eligible for this season?
Yeah, I would say so. Garrett's definitely a game changer because we've talked a little bit about, chaotic players. He is the epitome of a chaotic player.
Yes.
But if you look at him and his personality, like he's very calm and you don't expect it.
Mhm.
But he just wants to like screw things up, like have a fun time. It's this new like attitude towards the game where he's not making moves just to make a move. Like there is some thought there. But yeah, it's definitely a way that can change the game, and it changes, how others in the game react. Because like when people see chaos, they react very differently. Like sometimes people can get very flustered and ruin their own games when someone else is just creating chaos.
Yeah, for sure. And that's so very true about Garrett, is he is a very chaotic player, but look, you would never know that. Like just like kind of one of the things that he did and he's done too, and I've even played with him, is he will throw a random vote to cause a chaos and nobody will suspect that it's Garrett. And so it's one of those things that's where that game-changing move comes in, is like, oh, this is going to be a unanimous vote, but I'm going to throw a random vote over here. And then it's going to cause this like turmoil where I can keep control over who I want to control. And so that's the game changing part of Garrett that really made him eligible for this season.
Yeah, and sometimes throwing a vote can help, even like in the case of an idle play, and like you can, prevent yourself from going home in that case. So I definitely think it can be a really good strategy. And then Nate from season 4 as well. What made Nate eligible?
Yeah, so Nate was, or Shane, do you want to start?
You can start.
Nate was very much like very young, very like kind of almost cocky, if you will, coming in. And for good reason. He was playing a phenomenal game. He was like making moves, he was doing things. What really made, Nate to be this like, kind of all-star material is that he had set himself up perfectly. And what was crazy about season 4 is Dina was in there. And Dina, sadly, Dina was not able to make All Stars in Game Changers, the Vanguard season, but Dina was right there with Nate. They were very neck and neck on who was going to win this game. Sadly, neither one of them won. But Nate was so used to Survivor rules, and Dina was very adamant about her idol, and she was playing it at 6 because that's when it expired, and she was playing it, and there was no ifs, ands, buts about it. It's playing tonight. Nate, knowing how Survivor works, those idols expire at 5, which is not how Vanguard rules, and so he had tried to get them to flip on Dina, which he did, and she played her idol. And so then, Nate had to go home the next round because now Dina was on a warpath.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Like Nate's definitely in this interesting position where he played so dominantly. Like, there's no question he's an all-star and like probably would have won. Although if he's sitting next to Dina, I mean, that would have been an amazing final. I have no idea how it would have turned out. But he also, because he made that like game-ending blunder, he could have been a second chance candidate too. Because so he's coming in with this weird dichotomy where like he probably realizes, like, especially when we just called him an all-star, like he played a good game, he's a very good player, but there's something he can learn from his last game, and he's going to always have that chip on his shoulder. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes about this season.
Most certainly.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and then season 5, we have Steve, one of our other mods, so it'll be interesting to see Steve play, because I didn't get to see Steve play because it was the season right before mine, but go over how Steve's eligible for this season.
Steve and Madison are both very similar. They're both game changers, and they're both from the same season. But what Steve did specifically is there was kind of this, what we saw in season 5, there was this domination of Melissa and other women in season 5. And then you had kind of Frank and you had Steve that were trying to, Frank was in here a little bit and then Steve was in here. And so kind of kept going around and around. And Steve was kind of in that game-changing aspect where he was trying to split that up, and almost successfully, but then of course things go haywire and whatnot. But yeah, so Steve was, and he was the last guy standing. So
yeah, it's impressive.
Played like a very scrappy type of game, and it's definitely something where you're like clawing and doing whatever you can to stay in the game and make it another day, which would, in my opinion, give him the game changer status.
Yeah, and he does it very calmly too. So it's kind of like he's very calm about it.
I was gonna say that because you talk to Steve and he's just very easygoing and very easy to talk to. So it just seems like people would gel with him easily than other people. So and then we have Madison as well from season 5. So what made Madison eligible?
Shane, you want to start with that one?
Sure. So I think Madison was always, trying to make a move and like break up the status quo a little bit. Like she was working towards the end with Frank to try to get out Catherine, and kind of succeeded, and we threw a little twist in there that broke up those plans. I think that's kind of where her game changer status comes in, like trying to break up the status quo. She definitely like has some all-star upside to her too, and really like several of these people could have fit either category, and I wouldn't say one category is like lower or worse than the others, because game changers are all-stars in a way. It's just like a different viewpoint of it. But yeah, I mean, she was 4th place, which typically is the fallen angel, but we did a final 2, so it wasn't. But I always say this, like the last juror, second to last juror tend to be the better players of the season. Not always, but usually, like if you're getting that far and getting taken out right before the end, like you've done something right.
Right. Yeah, I tend to agree for the most part. All right, and then moving on to my season, someone that I got to play with both in this Vanquish season and in another org, Marvin, and he also played in Fans versus Favorites 1. And something that I like about Marvin is that he's, again, one of those people that will come into a game with a clean slate every single time, and he's not going to let like past relationships affect how he's going to play. So that's something I really appreciate and like really respect about him.
Yeah, he's definitely, so there's several of these people coming up from these later seasons, and they all tend to be the ones we called all-stars that to me just scream like dominant players, and I feel like he's one of them. Like, I don't know specifically what it is, but it's just his overall gameplay style is usually very dominant and like strong as a player. Like, he's very good socially, he's very good strategically, he's pretty good at challenges, so he's really like a triple threat in that regard. And I think in your season 6, he was an early merge boot because people realized it.
Yeah.
And then he, was the last jury member in the Fans versus Favorites mini and probably had a good chance to win if he made it to the end.
Yeah.
No, most definitely. And I think, again, like you're saying, that's kind of who Marvin is. I mean, as we saw tonight, like he won very quickly too.
Yeah, it was
He's like sitting there like, okay, and so that's like Shane was saying, he's just kind of like, especially to represent your season, he represents the 3 pillars very well because
yes.
he just is one of those players that, ends up kind of just mostly getting what he wants, except for in season 6 when they realized that he was a threat. So
yeah, and that was the only vote I think that I didn't know what was going to happen. And I mean, he had me kind of under his thumb in that season, and then he just got taken out all of a sudden. So but excited to see him here and see how he does. So moving on to season 7, we have another fallen angel. We have Kenna. So she went out just before final tribal council, where I think an argument could have been made that she could have won that season. So
yeah, I think for sure. I mean, in my opinion, I think I said this on the live at the time. Like, I thought she was gonna win if she made. She played very, very strong. She's a very, very social player. And if you just think of her personality and like how she shows herself in these games, you'd want to label her strength as social, but I would argue her strength is strategic, which just shows like how good she is when I'm saying like the thing that everyone thinks is her strength is actually not. Not to say she's bad, she's very good socially, but I think a really good player overall.
Yeah. I mean, I think with Kenna, you look at, again, this overall player that she's got that social capital to really pull off those strategic things that are going off in her brain. And so with that, it was easy to see her as an all-star because, that it's one of those things that you like look at it and you're like, that works. and it works well.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see if she can make it just as far this time or seal the deal. And moving on, I mean, we have a couple people from season 7 that went into second chances. Let's talk about Tribe Nerd's favorite, who Kristin would prefer to mozzarella stick over her. We have the pirate Sarah. So talk about Sarah.
Listen, Pirate Sarah has Shane, literally, and only Shane to thank for the fact that she's here. Because I would have put that mozzarella star as my mozzarella stick as my all-star. But no, I mean, again, like I joke and play around, and Sarah knows this, but like Sarah did, she came in from season 7 again, learned a lot from season 7. She was able to kind of make those, those changes where she really like dynamically kind of took over, if you will, like to all of our dismay. But I mean, she really just kind of powerhoused her way through until, we'll get to him in a little bit, but kind of really powerhoused her way through second chances.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was part of the reason. We'll get to the other half of that duo that took out Cameron pre-merge, and like masterminded a throne challenge to do so. So like, absolutely, I think I'm glad she's on this cast. So
yeah, I think definitely she has this like Boston Rob style of playing, like very dominant, like buddy system, keeping people on the phone. Which honestly, like she could, in my eyes, go either way. All-star, game changer, what is it? I don't know. But I do think game changer is a good fit for her, and she's like, I think underrated socially, because at least in my view, like you look at her and you're like, oh, this is like this cold, hard person, but she's actually one of the warmer people you'll ever meet. Even though she's
Absolutely.
not
Mhm.
what.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And then the other half of that duo, we have Esther, who went from being a first boot in season 7 to really changing up her game in season 8. And I'm sure you both can talk more about Esther being eligible for this season, why she is here.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really nicely as to why she's a game changer, because she literally changed up her game
Mhm.
successfully and made, the biggest jump in placement in Vanquish, at least so
Mhm.
far.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, no one this season's going to beat it because no one placed that lowly. But yeah, I think she definitely took some lessons from her first season. Was like, okay, here's, maybe I came off the wrong way to my tribe at first, or a little crazy or whatever, and they voted me out first, and took that, tried to figure out how to interact socially and like get her feet wet. Because like many people that we cast, she had no idea about these orgs, like never played one before, was just like, oh, this sounds cool, let me try it. And from my experience, when that happened to me way back when, I was like, oh yeah, these are just fun games, like people are going to be your friend, but they're not actually going to like make moves and stab you, and they did. I think she took those lessons and really learned from them her second time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she was one of those people. I mean, honestly, literally, we knew second chances was coming, but Shane and I, the second she was voted out, were like, I
Mhm.
mean, instantly on the spot, we're like, what would you do if you had a second chance? Like, and
I
offered her
remember that. Yeah.
instantly. And so it's because we saw that in her. Of like Shane mentioned, she's so excited, she really loved it, but we also knew that she had that potential to do some major
Mhm.
damage, and she proved that in second chances, which makes her that, again, like Shane said, game changer. She flipped that entire her game, not just the game of Survivor or Vanquish. She flipped her game.
Yeah.
And so yeah, she's a perfect game changer for this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And then our final second chance player from season 4 originally, but came back for second chances and was a major player that season, Wesley, host of Big Brother Vanquish as well. So definitely talk about Wesley. He was the reason for like a major flip in Vanquish history happening.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think. So, I mean, we didn't talk on him much when we were in 4 because we were more focused on Nate and Garrett there. But
Mhm.
even 4, he did decent. He did very decent. He again, he's a very strategic mind, very good socially, where he can get that brain to move in and have the capital to do it.
Mhm.
And then you saw that where he went, you know what, I'm gonna switch this whole thing up, and he threw it on, like he flipped it on its head, and to everybody's dismay, these 4 that we were like, they are done for, there is no way that they are flipping. And to see him and Catherine like flip, and by Wesley was like the ball roller of that one, that
Mhm.
really just kind of shook the entire game up. So I think it was no question again why Wesley was an all-star.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. I said it at the time, I believe, and I'll say it again, that there's a few names that pop up when I'm like, these are the best non-winning games in Vanquish, and
Mhm.
like not like they didn't make it to the end either. Dina from season 4 that we mentioned, and it's her choice that she's not on this season, not our choice. We want
Yeah, not
uh, Wesley, and then I would say there's another one coming up in a couple seasons.
Okay.
30 seconds we'll talk about that I would also put on that list.
Yeah.
But yeah, Wesley just, he takes these games so seriously, which is what you want to see, because we all on production are like giving up a lot to put these on, and like at least for me, all I want is someone to come in and just like take it seriously. Like don't mess around, like value the work we put in, give it your all, and if you don't do well, like at least you gave it everything you had and like tried to make it as immersive as possible. And like he, more than anyone I've ever seen, does that. So that's like really good on him, and he's successful at doing it too. It's not that he's putting his heart into it, it's he's succeeding and being a really strong player. So it will be very interesting to see how he went from season 4, where he played well and like got like 8th or 7th. So it's not bad by any means. Improved it to, in my opinion, one of the top 3 best non-winning games. And now where's it going to go from there? Will he win? I don't know, because I feel like he can come out too strong. Like, just like in Second Chance, like it was so clear he was going to win that like you have to vote him out, even if you're allies with him.
Right.
That's my only worry here, but that's like the sign of an all-star. So there's no question why he's here.
Yeah. And I think Wesley was probably one, like, I think he had a move where I think he was trying to take Kevin out, and like he just, messed it up a little bit, and that failure to take Kevin out was ended up costing him the game, unfortunately. So, but I think, it's very possible for him to know that what he did wrong there that cost him the game, and he can fix it this time.
100%.
Yep. So, all right, season 9 power supply, and we have 3 players from this season. So let's start with the fallen angel of that season, Ben, which is who I'm assuming Shane was leading towards as one of the best non-winning players. But
actually, he is one of the best non-winning players, but it's not who I was talking about.
Oh.
They're spicy.
Like,
no, I know who Shane's talking about, but yes.
even with like Nate, I think played one of the best non-winning games, but of like my top 3, it's just missing out.
No, Ben, I think the thing with Ben that season, we saw very much that Ben was in the driver's seat, and Trevor is his ride or die on the next to him in the passenger seat. Then you've got Sydney in the she's the backseat driver of it all. They work very cohesively well together.
Yes.
And we're able to again create bonds. They pulling in Victoria, pulling in JJ, and like pulling in all these people randomly, and it's for Ben again, like people hated that, and it's we put things on paper, and sometimes things look better on paper than we see them play out. And of course, we don't have a crystal ball because we don't know who's going to be on the season and what they're capable of. I think too, with those twists and things, I don't think Ben would have gone out, which is a little crazy because he could have easily won, which hands down, you look at that and you're like, that's all-star right there. Like, there's no question about it.
Yeah, he wasn't actually voted out, so we don't know how that would have ended differently had it been like a vote out. I mean, we could have had a final 2 of Trevor and Ben. So,
yeah, he definitely plays like the very strong like alpha type of game, but also I think a testament to his social abilities is like he can come at you and be like an ass and all that, and then can really, like, if he realizes he did something wrong or like hurt someone, like flip it really quickly and like
He's like a Sour Patch Kid.
I think I discussed him.
He might do you sour, but then he's so sweet.
Yeah. And then next up we have Amy, and I've seen Amy play a few times, few different orgs. And what impresses me so much about Amy is she's a very strong woman, and I think like when I watched her in the Heroes versus Villains mini be like a last minute addition, and she went and created like these quick alliances and like quick relationships and was able to get herself in despite being the last minute addition, I was just super impressed with her game. And even in season 9, she played very strong, and had it not been for like an alliance flip that took out her entire alliance, she very well could have won the game.
Yeah, I mean, for a second, I realized just now she's not the person I was talking about, but I thought she was. No, it's not, but she just misses it. But yeah, I think her, like, if you talk about dominant play style, that's the picture you see in the dictionary next dominant play style. Like, she was a target for so long, and it was the last of her alliance, and finally at 5th, they're like, if we don't take her out, like, we're done. And if they didn't take her out there, I think she probably wins because she's really good at challenges, and we did that thing where you got from 4 to 2 by winning challenges. So I'm pretty sure she gets to the final 2, and there's no way she doesn't win. It doesn't matter who she's against.
Right.
Her and Ben have been a great final 2, but like she'll win that.
She probably wins almost unanimously in that case, I think.
I agree. Yeah. I mean,
testament to her gameplay, because I think Ben is definitely a very strong non-winner, like one of the best, not my top 3, but very close to it.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing with season 9. There were so many strong players, and again, like I said, that was kind of I wish we would have had a crystal ball, because then we probably would have done a little bit different of twists and things like that. because of such that dominating, like, just cast in general. Like, but with Amy specifically, I mean, she was the talk of the merge boot. She was the merge boot. It was happening. And then because of things of people like cross talking and things like stories getting, whatever, it ends up flipping on from her to Aaron, and then again she's still, her and Chad are like the targets that entire, like, who's it gonna be? Is it gonna be Amy or is it gonna be Chad? But then Chad's winning, but then Amy's still sticking in there, and so it's kind of this like back and forth tennis match where Amy still ends up being the last of that alliance standing. So
it's absolutely crazy. Yeah. And then we have Rade, who finished in 8th place after he made a move and took out Michael with an idol in his pocket, because Michael did not see him flipping, and just like such a game-changing move. And yes, hit a twist, I think, unfortunately prematurely ended Rade's game after that, because he could have gone a little bit farther, I think, had the twist not happened.
oh, again the crystal ball aspect of it, but yeah, no, he did make that game changing, and but also talking about his social game too. Like, Chad was like, "There's no way this is not the round to flip," and Rade, in his connections and his social ability, was like, "This isn't the smartest round to make this move, but I'm gonna make it, and it's gonna work for me." And again, twist or not, he would, what I mean, he could have continued on, what I mean. So again, another one of those players from 9 that you can sit there and say, I got taken out by a twist and I necessarily wouldn't have been voted out. So very huge game-changing moment there in 9 that could have, continued to go on if not for a twist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very clear why he's a game changer. And I think there's a lot of, like, him going out with that twist leaves a lot of open questions and a lot of potential where if that didn't happen, he may also have cemented his all-star status. I think he's like one of the biggest what ifs. And this season will be really interesting to see how he builds on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be interested to see how Rade plays this season. So and then season 10, we have Erica, and Erica is someone both games I've seen her play, she's made it like right there almost to the very end. Like, she's a very consistent player. She's a very intelligent woman, and like I think she knows how to like build these bonds really quickly, and then like knows like what course of action to take strategically. So I'd be surprised if she goes out early in this season, like very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a season she would go out early, it's definitely one where she's labeled an all-star, but I still think I agree with you that like she's so good that it probably won't happen. Because I think a testament to why she's an all-star is from her season where ultimately, like, she was the last member of her tribe to make it to 5th place. And she had this move where she was in the minority of her original Starburst tribe after a swap, and they flipped. Well, she flipped it because I think she played the biggest role in that to take out, the bubblegum majority. So I think that was like a surprising thing that shows a lot of skill where she brought together like the Lollipop tribe and the remaining remnants of her Starburst tribe to really take out this dominant majority that could have just pulled in the Lollipops to pick her off.
Yeah.
And I mean, even on top of that too, like, we're talking pre-merge, there was her, Brian, and Rachel and Alex, and they were a tight 4. There was no shaking that up. They got rid of one player right off the bat, leaving Dylan kind of out there by himself. And instead of that 4, they started going, you know what? Are they going to start doing things on us? We need to get them before they get us. And she's the one that's going to Brian and being like, we're pulling in Dylan, and we're gonna make these blindsides happen before they can blindside us. And they really, I mean, they had to go back to tribal, so they decimated themselves, but it was not by their choice, but it was by her choice to make sure she was not on that losing end of it. So yeah, all-star material, 100%.
Absolutely. And then Brandon Booth, who I think is another big lock on the board as well. I mean, Brandon was a big winner, looking like a big lock to win the game. And he even had like a double idol play at the final 7. And then he just gets taken out by his family member. Yeah. And then Brandon H playing his idol at the last possible moment. And so like, you know, had that not happened, Brandon Booth likely could have gone on to win that season as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
this is the person I was talking about. Is
Oh
my
yeah,
that's what I figured you're talking about.
that it makes sense.
But the thing with Brandon is like, again, that was a very dominating game. That social capital that he has, like that
Mhm.
he then realized, hey, there's like this little three. I thought I was in here with Lollipop, but I'm starting to see some things that I'm not liking.
Yeah.
Let me start searching elsewhere. Which he was able to start building those bonds. I mean, Tanya gave him an idol, not literally not knowing that he didn't have an idol. Like,
Yeah.
but and so with those things that are happening, it's like one of those where he's very dominant in where Shane was saying earlier, you know you have to take them out. But
Yeah.
lo and behold, here comes Brandon, like, oh, I got my idol, but I don't have that one. He like pulled out, Malcolm, and here, let's hand them all out, or Parvati, like, here you go. Idols for everyone, like an Oprah moment. So yeah, it's sad. I mean, the very last question, his sister butchered it. It was an upset for everything, but yes, no, it was one of those things for Brandon.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what his reputation will be like to the other players going into the season, and how he can like counter that. So
Yeah, I think a testament to how good he is like we're talking about some of these, best games played, like Dina, Wesley, and Brandon are my top three, but I feel like Wesley's gonna have a bigger target because like Amy's gonna have the bigger target for being like this persona that's very dominant, and like Brandon will somehow sneak under the radar because when you think of him and I think of him, I'm like, oh yeah, he's like calm and nice. He's not this dominant player. And even just now, I was like, oh, I forgot that he was the one I was talking about. I thought it was Amy because like Amy just screams that. So
yeah.
if I'm even forgetting it, I feel like the players are gonna like not look at him as strongly as some of these other big targets.
Yeah.
Well, and it kind of, he was worried. He was the only member that was not there tonight, and I think he was worried that it was going to affect him. But I think it honestly might. Like, I think some of these people are going to come out like guns a blazing, and him being kind of, he's able. I've seen him slowly hitting in there in those chats and things like that, just so like, hey, I'm here. But I think that he's not going to be that bright target that everybody's going to be looking at going into what's to come for the season.
Yeah. Yep. Well, speaking of possible big bright targets, we have from season 11, we have Phil, and
We love Phil.
I really like Phil as well. I mean, Phil was a huge presence on last season, and like again, a big lock to return. I think everybody saw him coming back immediately, and just like, I love that he's a character that can just be like a villain. Like, admittedly, he can just play the villain part so well and like blow up tribals, and just, he was able to get that one tribal to work. He got Jamil out after just causing that entire chaos to happen, and then his tribe goes on a massive winning streak. And then he just kind of overplays, but that's just who Phil is. And I'm just going to be very interested to see if he actually does change up his game, or if he's like, as I think he said in his videos, that he's just going to be himself still. And I don't know that it's going to work out, but I think it's going to be a fun ride, however long it lasts.
Oh yeah, like that Jamil tribal was crazy, probably the craziest I've posted.
Yeah.
And if for no other reason, that's why he's a game changer for doing that.
Mhm.
Right. Well, and it's funny because I mean, just talking about game changing, like everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, okay, it's my, I get out here again, or my third time, whatever it is," and they're like, "I know what I did wrong. I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna." It feels like, oh, even in his video, like Jake, you mentioned, it's like, "Oh yeah, Phil 2.0 is gonna come." No, no, he's not. I'm not changing a damn thing, and that's just such Phil that who knows, with an all-star cast, people might be like, "He's a perfect shield, and I'm keeping him very close," or it's gonna be Phil not 2.0 and it's just gonna go. It's just, so I can't wait. I'm excited.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun no matter what. So, and then we have Megan from Fans versus Favorites 3, and I think she's the biggest, like, maybe, question mark unknown going into the season. I don't know that too many people are like, nobody's gonna be like, oh, I remember, how Megan played in this mini. And that could work out in her favor. So like, it'll be interesting to see how Megan does here.
Well, and that's the thing about the mini too, which is of course, you know, why we wanted some representation from these minis, but
Yeah.
it's funny because Megan is that like quieter, like, you know, when we're talking about like a Steve or Madison, like a quieter game changer. She's in there with Izzy, who like showed up as a massive bomb on day 2 of the mini. And I mean, a mini in and of itself, she makes it to day 3. That's hard to do, especially when we're giving them 10 minutes to like do things, you know. But she finds Izzy. They start planning and strategizing what they're going to do to take out this little, you know, cluster of awesomeness, you know, with Heather and Candace and Drew and them.
Yeah.
So she might be on that quieter end, and people may not see that game because, especially with minis, we don't have those confessionals. We don't have, people can't see the strategy of it, but we can promise you that Megan, from that many, like looking at her in those breakout rooms and things like that, Megan is a game changer, and she didn't make it to 6th place in a mini, 3-day mini for nothing.
Right.
Exactly. Like, and deciding when Izzy and Michael are such easy targets to just everyone say, let's take them right out. They just join late, to want to work with them and like succeed in that is pretty good and definitely a game changer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, with that, I guess it's the whole cast, but I mean, just like walk me and everyone else listening here through just like the casting thought process, how you cast a season like this, because it has to be difficult. There's so many moving parts and so many options to pick from to like make a season like this like really great.
Yeah, Shane, you kick it off.
Yeah, so I'll say the way I started for me is I started at season 1 and just made a list that I didn't think about anything in terms of balancing anything, just who from that season do I think fits all-star game changer, and went through every season and did that. I think I had 35 names. And then for me, it was a little tough because my perspective on some of these seasons is a lot different because I don't have the most involvement. Like, I try to really get all my information from the tribal councils and not follow any of the chats so that I can be as unbiased as possible. So I sometimes lose some of the information and don't know everything about these players. But from that list, you know, Kristin, I think, did the same and came up with a list, and we had some commonalities. And then we really looked at how to strike a balance, because there's many things you want to balance to have a good season. Like, if you even look at Survivor, like Winners at War, arguably, you know, you put the best players of all time together, and it was a great season, but it was not the best season. One of my favorite Survivor seasons is Blood versus Water, the first one, where that's an extremely eclectic group of returnees. You had pre-mergers, you had winners, you had some people you'd never see return again, like a diversity of seasons and ages and all that. And for me, I loved it and just thought the cast was really good. So we tried to strike like a balance. Like, we don't want too many people from the same season, but we also wanted to represent all of our seasons.
Yeah.
So we kept that in mind, because there's definitely some people. I mean, season 9 comes to mind where we had a lot we wanted to cast from there, but we tried to limit it to 3 people per season. So some had to get cut. We didn't want to have, you know, all the same type of player. We wanted to diversify the game styles. Obviously, men and women split, and that can sometimes be hard, especially when you're classifying by these, you know, terms. It's not always a split on how many are all-stars and game changers, and typically our seasons have less women, so statistically speaking, like, there's less women all-stars and game changers. And we didn't want, you know, like 18 Amy's, like this dominant player. That's why
Right.
there's some Megans thrown in there. But what I'll tell you is I think we just did that right now, is like everyone has a justification for being here. Like, they've earned their spot. Like, yes, there were other people we wanted who said no, like Dina, for instance, but that doesn't mean that whoever took Dina's spot is any less worthy. They're not going to be like the same fit as Dina, but they still fit the season. And, you know, there's a criteria for everyone. Like, yes, there's some people that we could have cast and just there's not enough space, or they just didn't fit the balance, or maybe we have other seasons planned in the future. Like, for instance, we were mentioning with Nate, like, yeah, he could have fit second chance, but we knew the season was coming, and we're like, well, let's wait a couple years. It's painful to do it, but he's a better fit for that. And Definitely, like if you're having like the all-star label, I'm like, well, we need some winners in there, we need some finalists in there, but again, there's plans down the line. So there's a reason that we cast who we cast. And I think some people maybe on the surface, you're like, oh, I don't remember them as much, or I feel like they didn't do anything. But really go back and dig and think about like some of the things we've said on this podcast about why they're a game changer, why they're an all-star, but also we take into account the potential people have. And I think we saw that on Second Chances. Like Esther is a first boot. We bring her back and she gets 7th place or 6th place or whatever she got and did pretty well. So I think we're going to see that this season. I think the mix of people we cast is really going to make an exciting season.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, and also too, I mean, everything that you said, and you said it so beautifully too. The other thing too is now this is a returnee season, so we know these people. So now you have to take into consideration not all the things that Shane just said. Now we have to go, who's going to play with a person they know just because they know him? Like, who's going to play with somebody now that now they're out of the season? They're now best friends. They didn't even play on the season together, but they're now best friends. Who hates each other and they're going to come after each other unnecessarily just because they hate each other. So now you have all of these Vanquish social dynamics that you're throwing in that you really have to kind of prepare for. And again, like Shane was saying, make this balance of all of these little points that we have to point out to like really go, all right, this cast is balanced. We're feeling good about it. We feel like there's, just however you want to word it. You may not always agree, but like there's rationale behind every decision and Vanquish. And it's, we're 12 seasons in for a reason, not including minis. We've continued to grow. We continue to make minus season 9 that people will still come for me and say those the twist was a horrible decision. But we continue to make, to build and prosper this game.
Yeah.
And it's because of decisions and stuff that are very hard sometimes, that you just have to make, and it is what it is. But I mean, I'm very excited for this cast. I think seeing, especially too, how some of these tribe dynamics went in. I know, it's going to be fun to see how people, like Shane was saying, having people, especially even our older seasons, those, Scott, all the way from season 1, 2021, April of 2021. Those people, they're like, oh my God, I haven't played, I haven't played in Oregon forever, or I don't have the time anymore. Oh my God, I forgot Vanquish existed because I fell off the radar because I have it's not 20, COVID time anymore.
Right.
So really to try and get that representation from everything is kind of where you have to really take into consideration everything that Shane and I both have said, that of every single bullet point. And then you sit there with your check mark, yep, nope, yep. So, and I think we did it good. I mean, we'll see.
Right. Yeah, I think encourage everyone to, keep an open mind about these players and go into the season, keeping in mind what they did to earn their spot here, but also the potential they have to further cement their mark. And when you think about these players and what you're saying about them on videos and stuff, think about if you were there and people were saying that stuff about you, how would you feel? Because a lot of times people, we can all get in our own heads and be like, oh, we're amazing, or this person's not amazing. But it's like we said, it's the whole balance of how we bring everything together and make it work versus just throwing all the same type of people together.
Yeah.
It's the Vanquish package.
Yeah, no, I think you guys have done the best that you can to cast this season. And I mean, I am always excited for all-star seasons of the show, and just especially now Vanquish, and having been involved for a couple of years now. And it's just this is definitely one of the most exciting seasons that I've just been hyped for. So I'm excited to watch it play out. Do we want to make just a winner pick, I guess, between the three of us? I mean,
wow.
I'm 2 for 6 right now.
Okay, who are you going to give a death sentence to? You got lucky with Austin.
Yeah. Yeah, myself and Austin, I got lucky with. I'm sorry for this person, but I really think if they can dodge maybe a reputation that they might have going in, from just playing, but I think they can do it. I'm gonna say Brandon Booth, and I really think he can do it. because he was so close last time. It's just going to be about, you know, trying to dodge the reputation that he might have. So
Brandon Booth, when you listen back to this, you can blame Jake for why you lost.
yeah, you can blame me. Totally do it.
Shane, what's your prediction?
This is hard.
So hard. I'm sitting here
between a few, and I'm just gonna go with one, and I don't know how confident I feel, but I'm gonna go with it, Marvin. Because I think he's the right balance between this like very strong style of gameplay, but also being under the radar, where when you look down the list of the all-stars, people will be like, oh yeah, like there's Amy, there's Kenna, there's Ben, there's Wesley. And Marvin is just as good, and he's not going to be the first name that comes to mind.
Yeah, Marvin's going to be interesting to track for sure.
I just feel like we've seen in Real Survivor, like look at Amber, Parvati, Sandra, like it's not who you would expect.
Right.
And Marvin is definitely like on the little past that, but I think I'm trying to balance it a little bit. Like,
yeah.
Oh boy,
sure.
I'm literally still sitting here like looking like this. There's so many. Here's the thing. There's so many moving factors with this cast, which is another reason why I'm so excited for this cast. Because again, there's, you know, you've got people from the same seasons. You've got people that for whatever reason love each other, hate each other outside of Vanquish. You've got, you know what I mean? You've got quiet people. You've got loud people. Oh man, I'm gonna go with Kenna. I'm gonna go Kenna. She's
went with her too.
Yeah.
She's a very social, amazing person. Everybody loves her. You can't find a reason to vote out Kenna until she's at the end. But I think she's smart enough to figure out what happened there, where she maybe tweaks it a little bit, that she's gonna worm her way right in there.
Yeah, I can see it. I can totally see it.
Kenna, don't disappoint. I'm just kidding.
Well, thank you both, Kristin and Shane, for joining me on this first episode of the Survivor Vanquish Vanguards coverage. And I'm excited to continue covering the rest of the season. Episodes are going to drop weekly. And can't wait for you all to see it and see what you think either during the season or after the season as you're listening to this. So, yeah. And so with that, we will see you all next time on The Tribe of Nerds.
Thank you.